Hi, everyone. Welcome to Creator Toolbox, a show brought to you by the ServiceNow Developer Program, where we demo new ServiceNow features for every developer's toolbox. My name is Earl Duque, Senior Developer Advocate here at ServiceNow, and I'll introduce Jay.
Hey folks, I'm Jay Couture and I lead product for what we're now calling our development acceleration team.
And hey, my name is Patrick Wilson. I'm a engineering director for the developer acceleration team.
Today, we're talking about all things Now Assist for Code, and we're going to go right into it and give it over to Jay.
Thanks, Earl. So what is Now Assist for Code? If you haven't heard of it, it is part of our Creator Pro Plus offering among a lot of our Gen AI tooling. And Now Assist for Code is specifically for helping developers on the ServiceNow platform with their scripting. So previously, it's been for passing a prompt while you are in your script editor and something like a business rule or a script include and saying, hey, I need you to help me write something like a function, for example, and describe it. And it will return some code that meets your requirements. In November, I believe, we also launched the ability for Now Assist for Code to edit your existing scripts. So you can highlight the entirety of a script and say, add comments for me, or replace this block with an if loop. And it will do that. And we are here to talk about some of the upcoming, very soon, features and functionality of Now Assist for Code, some of the big changes that we're making that we're excited about. So let's get into what's new with Now Assist for Code. About a week ago, we launched a spiffy new user experience that we'll see today, where the modals kind of are inlined and you have the ability to pop that out as needed and also provide feedback on suggestions. If you have high quality suggestions that you like, you can give us a thumbs up. If not, you can give us a thumbs down and tell us what you do or don't like about that. So it's easier to use now. And the big stuff that's coming in about a week from when we're recording this, so maybe around the time that this video goes live, we'll be launching Code Explain. So the ability to get an LLM provided summary of the script on which you're working, either a detailed summary or a high level summary. And this is great for folks who need to work on, say, a legacy script or somebody else's script, or just kind of getting familiar with writing script on the ServiceNow platform and want to understand what's going on with, say, a particular script include. The other big thing here is that and we'll probably have some information about this in our documentation, but we're changing the model and giving you some choice in models coming soon here. So the underlying models going on to kind of a new version of Now LLM, and it's going to provide higher quality suggestions than we have previously. And this is going to be supported for code generation, code edit, and code explain. And we're also giving OpenAI's GPT-4o as an option here, and you'll be able to manage these as system properties. So if you've used ChatGPT, we've heard from customers that sometimes they ask questions to ChatGPT about their script. You can now use that as an option or Now LLM, and that's up to you. Then coming shortly thereafter in the, I want to say March timeframe, is really big, and that's auto-completion. So similar to like the Copilot experience, we will have either GPT-4o or Now LLM providing suggestions for you as you type. So it's kind of racing you to figure out what the next thing is that you want in your script, and you'll be able to accept or reject those suggestions. And as part of that, as well as all of these other features, we're adding some retrieval augmented generation, or what you might know as RAG. And initially, this is going to be doing some static retrieval of your commonly used script includes and business rules and tables, custom tables, schemas. What's super cool about this is you're obviously working in your ServiceNow instance, and we know what's going on in that instance. So you don't have to go and take a look at a script include and which functions you have there while you're working in your business rule. Kind of automatically, we will inject some of those as suggestions for you while you're using features like auto-completion, and we'll see a demo of some of this shortly here when Patrick gets into the demo portion. The other thing I'll say is that we're going to be continually improving our retrieval augmented generation. We're going to be adding in like script context, such as the ECMAScript level, so that you're getting suggestions that are pertinent to the context in which you're working. We are going to see Patrick probably working in ES12, as well as like the context of a business rule. If you're working in a business rule, you're going to get best practice suggestions that cohere with what would be in a business rule. So we'll be improving that contextual awareness of our Gen AI capability here. So lots of really big, exciting stuff coming up here. We're really excited, and we think that in our testing, the quality of the suggestions are going to be really good here. So let's talk maybe a little bit, Earl, about why we did this. And it's because of customer feedback, right? We build features, we improve our products based on customer feedback. And what customers have told us is that they want to see better suggestion quality and generalizability. And lots of folks will kind of compare analysis for code to Copilot when they're working in their local IDE or to ChatGPT. And they'll tell us, hey, the suggestions could be a little bit better quality. So if folks are using GPT-4o as sort of their standard there, let's give the people what they want. So we're making GPT-4o available. And the other piece here is the confluence of all of these features: code generation, code editing, auto-completion, code explain, kind of gets you a halo effect of productivity where I can prompt a model to write some code for me. And then I can type a little bit and have it do some auto completions for me. And then I can say pass an edit to add in a bunch of comments or describe what the script is doing in comments at the top of the script. And then somebody else can come in and do an explain on that to get an understanding of kind of all of this AI generated code. So being able to do all of that together makes it a lot faster and more natural for me to kind of stay in the flow as I'm working on scripts on the platform. Some of the other feedback that we've heard that we've improved on here is latency and suggestions. So we're interested in getting you suggestions really, really quickly, especially for the auto completion use case here. We're going to be continually working on that, making that better, as well as best practice adherence. So in the quality of the suggestions, folks want confidence that the script that AI is generating for them or providing adheres with ServiceNow best practices. So that's all of that kind of stuff I had talked about with retrieval augmented generation and these improved models, and being able to provide those really, really high quality best practice suggestions to users. And the last piece is really around kind of the usability. And again, we'll see some of that in the demo coming up here shortly. Just make it really intuitive and simple and easy to use this so that basically anybody can come in here and start writing some script and build some really cool applications on the ServiceNow platform.
Hey, so Jay, when you talk about halo effect, is that an industry term? Is that something that's common nomenclature across the industry, or is that something you coined?
That's a good question. I would say I'm probably not the first person to use that term. I would say we didn't invent it, but that's kind of how we talk about adding all of these different features together and letting folks take advantage of all of them so that they have maybe a reduced, I'll call kind of cognitive overhead of all the different things I need to keep in my head at one time. Being able to offload some of those tasks like writing comments that basically get me 80% of the way there. And then I can go in and add kind of my own finishing touches to the script or to the comments to get it exactly the flavor that I want. That's just sort of how we talk about the synergy, to use a little bit of a corporate buzzword there, of having all of these features available together in one place at any time with models of your choice with all of this additional contextual awareness. So let's move into some of the key use cases here so we can actually get into the demo shortly. So I'll talk about code explain and then I'll pass it to Patrick to talk a bit about auto completion. So some of the key use cases for doing a code explain when I have a script that I'm working on that maybe Earl's written this really beautiful, lengthy, complex script, and I have no idea what it's doing. I've never seen it before.
Hey, that's me commonly when I look at my own scripts.
or if you forget what your scripts did. But let's say Earl's script has a little bit of an issue and it's not running as performantly as I want, but I need to understand it. I could just ask Now Assist for Code to explain the whole thing to me and get a better understanding of the pieces that are maybe not running so well that I can use some of this other functionality to improve. So it can help me debug script with which I'm maybe a little bit less familiar or haven't spent as much time with or haven't looked at in a long time. Same goes for understanding like legacy business rules. Maybe my company has written some business rules a really long time ago, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I can easily understand that. And the other really cool thing here is, let's say we onboard somebody new. I just got hired at a company and I've never seen any of this stuff before, and I need to accelerate kind of my time to getting an understanding of what's going on the Now platform with all these different scripts. Makes it really easy to take a look and get in kind of natural language what the scripts are doing. And it also helps me maybe learn scripting a little bit better and faster if I'm not an expert scripter, but I'm interested in maybe adding a little bit of business logic. I don't actually necessarily need to know all the nuances of writing JavaScript and APIs, et cetera. I can kind of have Gen AI help me write some of this, and I can use natural language to provide some edits and then do some explanations on it to make sure that it's actually achieving the outcomes that I'm looking for. So pretty cool stuff. Now let's talk about the use cases for autocomplete. Patrick, do you want to get into that?
Yeah, sure. So autocomplete is I think a lot of people associate it with kind of GitHub Copilot, but it's this like really kind of core AI assist kind of coding experience, right? And I think it's the one that people primarily associate with generative AI when it comes to coding. This experience that as I'm typing, this AI is running in the background and it's finishing my thoughts for me, or it's recognizing the things that I'm doing and it's automatically filling in with some, whatever it thinks that the next code that I probably want to write is. And it's such a killer use case. Many of the developers that I know, including myself, use tools like Copilot and these autocomplete tools in day-to-day programming tasks. And we really wanted to bring that experience to ServiceNow. So that's what we've done with our autocomplete feature. What we're doing under the hood is as you're typing, of course, we're always kind of pinging the model. In this case is GPT 4.0 for the first release of autocomplete. And based on what I'm typing, based on the things that I'm doing. Maybe I'm writing like a glide record query or something like that. And based on the tables that I'm querying, or based on the table that I'm querying, based on maybe some of the filters that I'm adding, the queries that I'm adding, it's recognizing what I'm doing and making kind of logical, like best guesses at what it thinks that the next thing I want to do is. Maybe I'm explicitly commenting to kind of trigger the autocomplete capability to fill in some functionality, some behavior for me. And it does that. It's a really powerful tool that I think accelerates development in a way that feels really kind of natural to these AI use cases. Yeah, it's an awesome feature. We're super excited to bring it to you.
So you said the first model that it's pinging for the autocomplete is GPT 4.0. Is the Now LLM part of that, or in the future?
We are working on bringing the Now LLM to autocomplete. We are trying to bring it as fast as possible. It may come with the first release of autocomplete. We're still evaluating it. But if it doesn't come with the first release of autocomplete, it'll certainly come very shortly after that.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying.
A little bit more maybe about autocomplete. So before we kind of get into the demo here, which I'm really excited to show you. So autocomplete is one of the first areas where we're excited to leverage things like RAG frameworks to fill in contextually relevant information from your instance. Things like what schema is available to me on my instance, right? Like I have a table, maybe I've added some custom columns to some table. Maybe I've created some custom tables altogether. And based on that, and based on recognizing that that's happened on the instance, our AI models can actually make recommendations to you based on what's actually happening on your instance, which is an incredibly powerful thing and just serves to increase the likelihood that you accept a suggestion, that the AI successfully recommends something to you that you look at and you say, yes, this looks good. I'm going to accept that. Every time we can do that, the value of the tool goes up for you and we're providing more value. So that's something that we're always optimizing around. And you can expect to see most of the new features that we're developing, including these new features that we're shipping now, are all optimized around helping get you better suggestions that help you solve your problems faster. RAG is one of the ways that we're doing that. Maybe really quickly, it makes sense to talk a little bit about sort of this relationship between the Now Assist for Code product and something like Copilot, and why one should use Now Assist for Code over Copilot. And when I think about this problem, I think about, what can we offer as ServiceNow? What can we offer to the customer, to the developer on the ServiceNow platform that other tools can't? And I think it comes down to really three key things. The first one is that we fine tune and prompt our models to follow ServiceNow best practices. It inherently and deeply understands more about ServiceNow scripting. And ServiceNow scripting looks different than writing React components that you're going to push through Next.js or any other kind of programming application. So we can kind of tailor things better to what we understand about the context of what you're doing, which is ServiceNow app development. The second thing that Copilot doesn't know, that ChatGPT doesn't know, is they don't know your instance. We do know your instance. We know what's happening on your instance. We know what tables you have on your instance. We know what other script includes you might want to leverage. And we can fetch all of that information at runtime as you're prompting the model, as you're asking for generation, as you're coding. Which is an incredibly powerful thing. It just further increases the odds that you have to do a little bit less work to use that utility script include that you have somewhere on your instance, or to make sure that you're querying the right tables that you happen to have on your instance with the customizations that you might have made to those tables. That's kind of a sort of an advantage that we have by integrating this product tightly into the instance the way that we've done that other tools can't. And the third is, of course, just data protection, security. If you're, using the Now LLM, of course, all of that data remains in the ServiceNow data centers. Even if you're using something like OpenAI, all that data is remaining secure through Azure. And that's, we can offer certain kind of protections and guarantees around the security and the safety of your data. So I think there are a lot of reasons to use Now Assist for Code over some competitive products.
I mean, just the fact that it knows your instance and can contextualize everything makes it much easier to use.
Right, exactly. All right, demo time.
Demo time.
All right, let's get into it. Cool. So I'm just going to quickly show you some of the new features that we're shipping in Now Assist for Code in the coming months. So here we have a script include. This is where I'm going to start with my demo here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is, and actually already we can see right here, right? We have this little ghost text here. Use Command Enter. I'm on a Mac, obviously. Use Command Enter to start generating code with Now Assist. And that's the very first thing that I see when I have Now Assist for Code enabled. And when I have it all licensed and everything, this is the first thing that I see when I'm coming into a script block for the first time. That's a nice little call to action. So I think I'll go ahead and do that. I'll hit Command Enter. And we get this pop-up. Of course, we can pop it down into our text editor here or pop it back out again. I'll make use of the space that I have here. And here I'll generate code with Now Assist. Now, you can't see it, but we're already starting to show the first major feature that we are delivering very soon, which is that this Now Assist block is now powered and is configured on this instance to be powered by GPT-4o hosted on Azure. So we'll see a difference in the kinds of suggestions that it's making. And for those developers who are maybe used to using Copilot or maybe used to using ChatGPT to help write code for you, I think you'll find that a lot of the suggestions that are made by GPT-4o and the quality of the suggestions is very comparable. It's very similar because, of course, it's using the same model under the hood. So let's start with a really simple example. This is always my favorite one because it's so simple. Query the incident table. We'll do some more examples here too, some slightly more interesting things, but I'm going to query the incident table and log the, log each incident to the instance log, something like that. Let's just see what it does here. I'll hit enter. Okay, it's going to run off. It's going to go and generate that code. We see our shiny little sparkle thing rotating, which tells us that something's happening. So, and now I got some code and I can see that code has been suggested down here. It's just one big new code block. We can see some of these like little thumbs up, thumbs down icons that'll allow us to send our feedback back to the Now Assist for Code team to tell us that something went pretty well, or maybe something went really badly and you want to tell our team about it. Of course, you can leverage these things. I'll go ahead and accept that code and we can come and look at it. So here we can see that it generated a function for me, query and log incidents, create a glide record object for the incident table. Yeah, we can see that it's querying the incident table. We can see the query is happening here. We're iterating over each one of those records, and now we're logging gs.info. We're logging the incident number and short description. That's great. Okay, very cool. Let's do some more. I want to do something more interesting. Write a script include that, let's say, automatically assigns an incident to the logged in user if the incident is high priority, something like that, right? So let's see what it comes up with when I do that. This feels a little bit more like a real use case, is like maybe some module, some functionality that I want to build into a script include here. So made a suggestion. Let's check it out. So right off the bat, we can see they actually made a pretty big suggestion this time. And we can see here that it's looks very script include-y. It kind of follows all the best practices of a script include. We can see that it's creating this class. You see the type that's being defined here. And then within it, we can see that it's generated a lot of pretty helpful code for me here. Assign high priority incidents. So it made a script include for me that gives me a method that assigns high priority incidents. It seems like it made a decision that it'll do that based on a provided incident sysID. That makes some sense. Has some validation baked into it. It's getting the current user ID off of Glide Session. That's one of our APIs. That's awesome. It's querying the incident record. When it finds that incident, it's made kind of an assumption here, check if the incident is high priority, which is just assuming if the priority is 1. That kind of checks out. We can make modifications to that, of course, if we want to. Sets assigned to, updates the incident. Yeah, this seems like a pretty good kind of first pass at a script include that does basically what I asked it to. Now, let's get into some more use cases here. So let's say that it has all these comments. I don't love the comments. I want to get rid of them. I'll just edit it. So I'm going to highlight all this code. And when you highlight code, you get this little sparkle button down here, which is kind of neat. I'll go ahead and click it. And it tells me the different things that I can do with Now Assist. These are the different kind of functionalities that we have available to us through Now Assist for Code. And the first one here is something we've shipped before, which is edit code. That's not a new feature. What, of course, is new, though, same with code generation, is that it, too, is powered by GPT-4o, as long as your instance is configured to leverage GPT-4o, which this instance is. So I'm going to go ahead and just do something really simple here. Remove the comments. I don't want comments. These are I don't believe in comments as a developer. My code is self-documenting. We've heard people say that, right? To the extent that it's true, I don't know. But okay, so we're editing this code. It's going to take a little bit. And then it comes back and, hey, it did a pretty good job, looks like to me. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and accept that. Okay, I've removed all my comments. That's awesome. Now, maybe I want to do something more interesting. Maybe I want to say, like, I feel like just as I'm looking at this code, I kind of want this priority calculation stuff to be like split out into its own function. I want a function on this script include that assesses whether or not an incident is high priority. So maybe I'll prompt it to do something like that. I'll hit Command Enter again because I have code highlighted. That just pulls up our edit code modal. Extract out the incident priority check into its own function, something like that. Let's see what happens when I do that. Let's go ahead and editing the code. That's pretty cool. All right, so it went ahead and did that. It went and identified like this incident gr.priority equals 1 check, split that out into its own function. It called is high priority, where it's piping in the incident gr. And then it's also creating a new function here, is high priority. That's pretty cool. That looks like a good change. Thanks. That saved me a little bit of effort. Maybe I'll even do a little bit more. Like I'll highlight this and maybe I'll actually, you know what? I've been using edit a lot. Let's get into some autocomplete use cases. So I have this is high priority function that's in here. And right now it's just checking priority equals 1, but maybe I actually want to change it a little bit. I'll delete that and I'll leave a comment or something that says like, return true if the incident is high or critical priority. Something like that. I'll wait for a second. Autocomplete's chugging away in the background. Bam, it's popping in pretty quick. It's recognizing that in this case, actually, this schema on this table, if I went and showed you the incident schema, you'd see that high and critical priority maps to these kind of underlying values, which is where critical priority incidents are tracked with a 1. That's what's contained in the data. High priority incidents is tracked with this too. And because we're taking the schema on the table and piping that into the prompt that we're sending to GPT-4o, it can make those inferences for us and start making some pretty helpful suggestions. It just saves me a little bit of effort from having to go and look at schema information and stuff myself. It already knows that information, so it can use that information. That's awesome.
This isn't the first time we've seen code gen work. Obviously, code generation is part of like the original Now Assist for Code, stuff like that. But one of the things I always think about for like graphics cards, right? When I'm looking into graphics cards, I look at GPU hierarchies on like Tom's Hardware or something like that. Where if you were to give like a performant percentage of comparing code gen now versus code gen like a year ago, how much are we improving every year kind of thing?
That's a great question. We can maybe even use your analogy and say that like maybe in terms of NVIDIA cards, before we were on like a 10 series and like now we're on the 50 series. If you believe that the 50 series is significantly better than the 40 series or even the 30 series, but I think that's actually a pretty good analogy if you actually look at those benchmarks. But maybe to answer the question directly, I would say that it's hard to say exactly, but in terms of if I was going to kind of assign percentage points, maybe before we were in the like 40 something percent range where we were getting suggestions some of the way to where you wanted them to be. And now we're in probably the 80, 85% plus range where we're getting you at least 80% of the way there almost every time. And the more context that you put into your prompt and kind of the more that you get used to using this, the more that you can get out of it.
It's very like just my experience kind of using these capabilities. It is notably better. I think it is notably better than, this time last year if we were to have this conversation.
Which is a great thing for us to talk about because for a lot of us that are testing things out or seeing capabilities and stuff like that, if the last time you didn't try this was a year ago, then now's the time to try it again, see how it feels part of your workflow and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, come give it another go. Absolutely.
Can you tell the good people what the logic is around when auto trigger actually triggers? Because in this case, you wrote a comment, but you don't necessarily have to do that, right?
Yeah, great question, Jay. So there are a lot of different places that I can invoke, autocomplete. Like, let's just take like an existing piece of code maybe that we already have. So let's say that as I'm typing, I'm starting to build some of my like kind of error handling code, right? Like if there is no like incident sysID, and then it just jumps right in, right? So autocomplete is firing really all the time. Anytime you're at the end of a line, anytime that you're starting a new line, anytime that you're like typing out some like API or something that you might want to use, autocomplete is kind of firing under the hood and making suggestions which you can accept or which you can reject. That's a big difference from folks that have been with Now Assist for Code for a long time might remember a older auto trigger feature that we shipped, which was very explicitly triggered as a response to things like comments and only comments. In this case, the autocomplete capability looks a little bit more like what you'd expect to see in like GitHub Copilot, where it's always making suggestions.
And we fire the responses after a slight delay, right? I believe it's about a second and a half.
That's right. Yeah. So what we do on kind of the Now Assist side is we wait until it seems like you're kind of done typing, or if you're actively in the middle of typing something, we don't want to like jump in and interject with some suggestion, right? So instead, what we do is we wait for a little bit. We do what's called debouncing it for developers who have built APIs that debounce before. We debounce the input, and once we're pretty confident that you're probably done typing, you might be ready for a suggestion. That's the time in which we offer a suggestion.
Is that time adjustable at all?
It is not. Good question.
And then I also had a question. If it's constantly checking for that, hey, it's time for me to make a suggestion, how does like token usage look behind the scenes for autocomplete if it's constantly pinging?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as you're using the product, of course, we're always firing off suggestions. And because we're firing a suggestion, there's some amount of time that goes by between us making that suggestion and coming back with it. Um, you may continue typing before we've actually had a chance to show you that suggestion. In that event, we don't charge any tokens, and it's considered like a canceled suggestion. In the event that we actually show you a suggestion, that's the time in which tokens are consumed and assists are consumed.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying that.
Maybe one more thing to add, Patrick. A scenario in which you wouldn't get a suggestion is when IntelliSense fires, right? So we prioritize IntelliSense over the triggered suggestions.
That's right. Yeah. So, and I can show an example of that. Like as I'm like, let's say in here, I'm like running GS dot, and we can see that there's these IntelliSense suggestions being offered. Of course, we wouldn't step over the IntelliSense suggestions that are being offered in order to make a suggestion. But if I hit escape here and then I wait for a moment, then it's at this point in time where we'll actually make a suggestion.
And that example you just did answers my other question that I was about to ask. Is autocomplete running only on new lines, or is it in the middle of also typing in the middle of a script line or anything? And it just did it in the middle of one, so that answers
That's
that.
right. That's right. Awesome. Really quickly, I'd love to show code explain. As a developer here, you'll remember that earlier I prompted this model and I said, hey, remove all of my comments because I thought that my code was self-documenting. And, of course, like all developers that think their code is self-documenting, I was wrong. So let's go ahead and try out code explain to see, what it has to tell me about like the behavior of this function. Maybe I'm coming back to it after a long time or something. And as I click this sparkle icon, I can see, hey, I can use Now Assist to, of course, I can use it to add comments back into my code, but instead I'll show something new, which is our summarize code. I'll go ahead and hit that. What we'll do here is we'll analyze the code, and then we'll just give you kind of a brief summary of what's happening. This code defines a class that handles the assignment of high priority instance to a current user, et cetera, et cetera. So what it provides here is a very brief summarization of the code that we're looking at here. From here, maybe I want like a little bit more detail. I actually want kind of a line by line description of like what's happening here. So I can click this explain code in detail. And once I've done that, it'll run through analyze code. It'll produce kind of a larger suggestion for me this time. So it'll take a little bit longer than the summarization does. And then I can scroll through and read through like, what's actually happening here under the hood. It's defining a class named incident assignment. It tells me more in depth about like what's happening with each of these APIs that I'm leveraging. It tells me about the different methods that are available or that are being defined inside of the script include in this case. It gives me some of the considerations that it's leveraging. And it just in general gives me a kind of a more thorough, deeper explanation of the code that I'm using here. And that's our kind of code summarization and code explanation capability that we're adding to Now Assist for Code.
That's awesome. Is there a context window for how many lines you can give to it?
I think there is not in the case of like the main thing is that the more tokens that are consumed, the more tokens that are consumed passing context into the model, you'll wait longer. The more that it has to explain. So the kind of primary sort of function there is like, how long are you waiting to get like a full explanation?
Nice. And I also had another question. That explain context in detail button, it's great. That's like, especially for the sake of documentation and or having a person catch up to it. If I have multiple people get to this script and do that, is it getting saved anywhere so that other people can reference what was shown in a previous explain code in detail, just so that it can be shared across multiple people, or is it per usage?
It's per usage. It is saved within the context of the same session. So if I'm like flipping back and forth between like summarize this code for me, like explain this code fully for me, and if I like go back to summarize or something, like we cache those, but we don't cache across like different users using the tool. But I think that's a great suggestion. It's one that we'll take back to the team.
Yeah, I think we'll be adding, possibly not in the same time frame on release here in the next month or so, but maybe shortly thereafter, a button to kind of take that explanation and add it as comments to the top of your script, so that everybody gets those that explanation there right at the top of the script, and you don't have to keep running that explain.
And that's the demo. So, we saw um, the GPT powered code edit capability and code generation capability, which we're super excited about. And we think developers are going to really like. We saw a little bit of our new autocomplete capability and the types of suggestions that it can make and the ways that it can help save time, also powered by GPT. And we saw a little bit of our code explain and code summarization capabilities, all of which are coming very, very soon. There are a few gotchas, of course, and the primary one being, these are LLMs, right? This is Gen AI that's driving this stuff. And LLMs will do LLM things. They will occasionally hallucinate. They will occasionally make suggestions that aren't necessarily exactly what you wanted to come out of them. That's true of all generative AI products. They're non-deterministic. Over time, we will be continuing to do work to continue to fine-tune these models, continue to improve the way that we're prompting these models and the types of context that we inject into these models, so that you can expect over time with every release better suggestions and better suggestions coming to you that increase the odds that you accept suggestions and increase the odds that you are saving time writing code, which is really what this is all about. So yeah, Jay, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of what's coming up next?
Yeah, I'd love to. So some of the things that we're really focused on here is kind of the outcome of like making this experience telepathic to what you want it to do. And the way that we're going to do that is by continually improving that context that we're sending to the model through retrieval augmented generation, and the accuracy and efficiency with which our logic kind of goes through all of the context that is provided through RAG and selects the most likely things that you want as part of your suggestion. We're going to be continually improving latency here as well. That's certainly very important for the auto completion use case, and we'll be doing some stuff kind of under the hood in terms of caching suggestions, etc. And as always, as you're seeing kind of with the improvements to quality here, our commitment is to continue to kind of stay with the state of the art in terms of the model and the technology and the quality and the architecture to bring a really, really fantastic user experience here. So that's kind of what's next for Now Assist for Code. What's next generally for sort of the Gen AI stuff that we're working on? I will maybe vaguely say that you can look forward to some agent or agentic development experiences that will be powered by kind of all the pieces under the hood here of Now Assist for Code and do a lot of really exciting things. And that's going to be a teaser plug for come see us at Knowledge 2025 and CreatorCon, and see what ServiceNow is doing in a few months here in the agentic Gen AI space. So really exciting stuff. And maybe I will add some plugs here to, if you're seeing this today, go bug your instance admin, or if you could do it yourself, upgrade to the latest version of Now Assist for Code. In the store and app manager, check out what version you're using. Make sure you have the latest one. It might be the Yokohama early availability release, which has those UX improvements. If you have access to that, it might be the February release with Code Explain. It might be the March release with auto completion. So whenever you're watching this, make sure that you're on the newest version. You're getting all of this cool new stuff and high quality suggestions. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to us for feedback. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can leave comments on this video, wherever you're sort of interested in talking about this. We're probably keeping an eye on it. We're very interested in feedback, and we're happy to take that feedback and do whatever we can to continue making this very, very useful and valuable to you. So don't hesitate to reach out to us with any of that feedback. Anything you want to add, Patrick?
No, the feedback is really important for us. Like we genuinely, just to reiterate, we genuinely really want to hear from you and about your experience so that we can make this product better for you. That's what this is all about for us. So please reach out.
Awesome. So any documentation or any links that Patrick or Jay provide to me, I'll make sure to put it in the description of this video, along with their contact information for that feedback. But otherwise, that wraps up this episode of Creator Toolbox. We have a lot more episodes coming and or already posted, so check that out on our channel. Thanks, everyone.